What's going on, everyone? It's been a good minute, but for these next set of videos I'm going to be putting together for you guys, I'm going to be working on another third-person shooter template, or a prototype. But as I'm doing that, I'm going to be chronicling it through a set of videos to help you guys kind of get some examples to look at, but also to give some ideas around on building of a third-person shooter. So for this one set of videos, I'm going to start off with doing some simple stuff. We're going to be doing just setting up the camera correctly, so that way when we're going up to objects in the world, we can rotate around our character. We can go up to a wall, and we're only going through the wall. We'll go through character clipping, so the camera will disappear. The character will disappear if the camera gets too close, and reappear once we exit that character's mesh. We'll also do. Alright, well, real quickly, let's call this a camera. We can copy this, we can paste that below, take our mesh, and we can drag it into the target as well. It's kind of doing the same thing we just had already set up with the print strings. And so for the next set of this video here, we're going to go into getting our character to have an aim offset animation blending for when you are aiming weapons. So as an example, I'll bring over what we're going to accomplish for this. For this, mind you, this is the other project that I'm basing a lot of this on. But right now we have it where the character will turn whenever we aim in the direction and will lock into his back. And now the next part we're going to do is we're going to get this guy to have his spine aim up and down as we look around with this character. So if we have the chance to, I'll try to get it where the camera will be able to adjust itself as we're looking up and down. So let's get started. So let me drag the main project over to the side, and let's focus on what we're working on. So last time what we did with this character was we delved into his blueprint. So you can click on the character we're working on. We can come over to edit blueprint.
Boom! What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Midnight Invader here. In this video, we're going to talk about how to add weapons to your character. If you don't have a weapon, I'm not sure why you're watching this video, but the way I'm going to show you, you're
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, your boy Virtus here, and welcome back to my Unreal Engine 4 FPS series. In today's video, we are going to be showing you how you can finally add a weapon into your game, because as of right now, we are just a set of a character and a pair of hands that's walking around, well, quite literally empty-handed. So what I'm going to be doing is showing you how to get a weapon in there. It's going to be an AK-47. One thing that you guys do need to do before you do start off the video is go ahead and download the project files from my website. It's virtushub.com, and then inside of the first person shooter resources you should have these files. One for the AK-47 model itself, and then you've got the diffuse, the normal, and the specular as well. We're going to be importing all of that in today's video and getting that weapon in the player's arms. Now, one other thing that I wanted to do before we do go any further is actually just fix up our blend splice a little bit. So what I mean by that is when I start walking forwards and then release that button, you can see it really quickly flicks back to our idle. It doesn't look smooth and it just doesn't look great. So all I'm going to do is add a little bit of fade between the two animations, and then That's all done inside of my walk run blend space. So if I go ahead and set my interpolation time to 1, that's just pretty much going to fade between the walk run and the idle. It just makes things so much smoother. So once you've done that, just go ahead and close it, press play, and now when you walk forwards and let go, you can see it's got this nice fade as opposed to like a dirty flicker. So, moving on, let's go ahead and import this weapon into our game. So, what I'm going to do for now is go into my blueprints folder, and I'm going to go straight out to the main bit here, and then I'm going to create another folder for weapons. So I'm going to open that up, and inside of my weapons folder, I'm going to create another one, and I'm just going to call this AK-47. Once we've done that, open it up, and then from there, if we go ahead and grab our OBJ file now, just drag this into your scene, just like that, and then we need to make sure this is imported as a skeletal mesh, as we're going to be doing some stuff to it later on, and then don't worry about setting the skeletal mesh, just leave that completely blank. By leaving it blank, it's going to create one using this mesh for us, which is exactly what I want it to do, and then just go ahead and press import. Give it a couple of seconds, it will load up. And then once it has loaded up, all we're going to be doing is, don't worry about this, all we're going to be doing is simply grabbing these textures now and just dropping that into our scene as well. So give it a couple of seconds to import those. It's just the three textures, diffuse, normal and specular. Using these materials or these textures is just going to allow us to give a little bit of extra life to our weapon. It's going to give it color, depth and all of that good stuff. Now by default it would have created this AK-47 material. It just doesn't look that great, so we're actually going to be deleting that. So what I'm going to do is quickly delete this, and then we're going to make another material for our weapon, and I'm going to show you how to quickly set up your normal, your diffuse, and your specular. So right click in your content browser and create a new material. And then with this material, let's call it AK-47_matte. Open it up, and then once you're in here, go ahead and press T to create a texture sample, or right click and just type it in. It's entirely up to you. And then with this first one, I am going to be using the diffuse. And then just go ahead and hook the top little node up here to the base color. And this is going to give us a base color for our AK-47. So now you can see we've got our wood, we've got our metal, and that's all good. And then if you select the normal map and then press T, so basically if you select an asset in your content browser, then press T, it's going to automatically bring in that specific texture, which is great. So do the same thing for your normal, you can see we've got that there, and then do the same thing for your specular as well. And now all we've got to do is just hook these up to the right little nodes here. So my normal goes into my normal, and then my specular goes into my specular, and it's as simple as that. Now, you guys could fiddle around with the roughness and the metallic values if you want to make it look a little bit prettier. It's entirely up to you, but for now, just for the purposes of this tutorial, I think this is going to be just fine. So go ahead and apply those changes, and then what we're going to do now is go over to my AK-47 skeletal mesh, open it up and make sure the weapon has come in. Now, as of right now, with this model is standing upright, it's not too much of an issue. As into your scene just like that, and then we need to make sure this is imported as a skeletal mesh, as we're going to be doing some. We go ahead and grab So I'm going to open that up, and inside of my weapons folder, I'm going to create another one, and I'm just going to call this AK-47. Once we've done that, open it up, and then from there, if we go ahead and grab our OBJ file now, just drag this into your scene. Just like that, and then we OBJ file, and I'm going to create another folder for weapons. So I'm going to open that up, and inside of my weapons folder, I'm going to create another one, and I'm just going to call this AK-47. Once we've done that, open it up, and then from there, if we go ahead and grab our OBJ file now, just drag this into your scene, just like that, and then we need to make sure this is imported as a skeletal mesh, as we're going to be doing some stuff to it later on. And then don't worry about setting the skeletal mesh, just leave that completely blank. By leaving it blank, it's going to create one using this mesh for us, which is exactly what I want it to do, and then just go ahead and press import. Give it a couple of seconds, which is exactly, just leave that mesh, as we're going to be just like that. And And then we need to J file now. So we've done that, open it up, call this AK47. Once we've done that, open it up, and then from there, if we go ahead and grab our OBJ file now, just drag this into your scene, just like that, and then we need to make sure this is imported as a skeletal mesh, as we're going to be doing some stuff. To give a little bit of extra life to our weapon. It's going to give it color, depth, and all of that good stuff. Once it has loaded up, all we're going to be doing is, don't worry about this, all we're going to be doing is simply grabbing these textures now and just dropping that into our scene as well. So give it a couple of seconds to import those. It's just the three textures, diffuse, normal, and specular. Using these materials or these textures, it's just going to allow us to give a little bit of extra life to our weapon. It's going to give it color, depth, and all of that good stuff. Now, by default, it would have created this AK47 material, it just doesn't look that great. So we're actually going to be deleting that. So What I'm going to do is quickly delete this, and then we're going to make another material for our weapon, and I'm going to show you how to quickly set up your normal, your diffuse, and your specular. So right click in your content browser and create a new material. And then with this material, just call it AK47_matte. Open it up, and then once you're in here, go ahead and press T and create a new, set up your normal, your diffuse, and your specular. So right click in your content browser and create a new material. And then with this material, just call it AK47. _matte. Open it up, and then once you're in here, go ahead and press T to create a texture sample, or right click and just type it in. It's entirely up to you. T and create a new material. And then with this material, just call it AK47_matte. Open it up, and then once you're in here, just call it AK47.
Ёбаный в рот.
Бля.
Где жестко, да? Говно на лице?
_matte. Open it up, and then once you're in here, go ahead and press T to _matte. Open it up, and then once you're in here, go ahead and press T to create a texture sample, or right click and just type it in. It's entirely up to you. And then with this first one, I am going to be using the diffuse. And then just go ahead and hook the top level, or write it up, and then once you're in here, go
Это школьная история.
Да я сейчас это делаю. Unreal Engine через полчаса.
Блять, у них там такие... С самого начала смотри, у них там такие пиздец в скайп, серьезно. Они просто сегодня с девушками выпустили, потому что понял? 8 Но так у них там одни мужики, пиздец, там такая дичь.
Как?
Там пиздец, там реально, там почти вся история, просто как настолько фейлы увидит, я не ожидаю.
Жестко, да.
go ahead and press T to create a texture sample, or right click and just type it in. It's entirely up to you. And then with this first one, I am going to be using the diffuse. And then just go ahead and hook the top little node up here to the base color. And this is going to give us a base color for our AK. I can just type it in. It's entirely up to you. And then with this first one, I am going to be using the diffuse. And then just go ahead and hook the top little node up here to the base color.
Ты смотрел, да?
Конечно.
Вот это Оксимирон смотрел.
Смотрю, я знаю.
Прикольно?
Смотрю?
Да.
Я батли не видел, но я слушал, как он с бастой пел, понял? Да пиздец не нравится Unreal Engine, ебаный.
Мне нравится.
А чё тогда не делаешь?
Мне нравится.
А? Не то чтобы время, ну пиздец вообще не нравится делать.
А, это не баги. Это не отбирается.
And this is going to give us a base color for our AK-47. So and this is going to give us a, that's all good, for our AK-47. So now you can, and this is going to give us a base color for our, up here to the, going to be yep it in, diffusely up to you. And then with this first one, I'm going to be using the diffuse. And then just go ahead and hook the top little node up here to the base color. And this is going to give us a base color for our AK.
Тебя не снова что ли вместе?
Что? Не знаю. Не, они ж просто дружат.
Ну, знаешь, дружба, наверное, снова потом.
А может быть.
AK-47. So now you can see we've got our wood, we've got our metal, and that's all good. And then if you select the normal map and then press T, so basically if you select an asset in your content browser then press T, it's going to automatically bring in that specific texture, which is great. So do the same thing for your normal, you can see we've got that there, and then do the same thing for your specular as well. And now all we've got to do is just hook these up to the right little nodes here. So my normal goes into my normal, and then my specular goes into my specular, and it's as simple as that. Now, you guys could fiddle around with the roughness and the metallic values if you want to make it look a little bit prettier. It's entirely up to you, but for now, just for the purposes of this tutorial, I think this is going to be just fine. So go ahead and apply those changes, and then what we're going to do now is go over to my AK-40. As of right now, creating your secting, guys should have left hand AK-40 shaders. That's why it's still real as one that's going to its entire. We've got the wood. Actually, there we're going to move that to my sub. So now you can see that you can just close it. It's entirely up to you. Actually, there we go. It's all loaded up. Handle M. Information, animate, and then just click creating this sort of something like a model, and it's a simple do mesh in there. Going to this up in our weapon to place it in. I'll get a socket for. So hop over to my skeleton over here in my skeletal mesh to socket. Place the socket. So when you and then from there, just add a base, click it now, and define. What I'm going to do is you can still an all animation. So switch to pre-idle to supreme, way too simply at the top with time to do this. Obviously, with this, they're 100, but what my little dot that through down going to be and stuff and actually getting this weapon spawned into the game now. So go ahead and close this up. What? I'm going to be setting the it's free. There. For me, I can get there as well. First things first, I'm going to be doing this is actually with our character. We've got to create a socket for that weapon. Setting up what sort of another weapon later on, say it's up. And what we're going to do, so just drop the skeletal mesh. Let's just go ahead and close this up for that weapon to be attached. And then if I go ahead and hop over, is going to be the right hand. Over here in my skeletal meter, we've got to do now then is actually give the engine a way to know where we want to place it in our game. So the way we're going to be doing this is actually with our character. We've got to create a socket for that weapon to be attached to. So open up your SWAT character skeleton. So for me that is over here in my skeletal mesh. And then if I go ahead and hop over to my skeleton, inside of here we need to, and then if I go ahead, so for me that is over here in my skeletal mesh. And then if I go ahead and hop over to my skeleton, inside of here we need to socket it to a part of a body. Now for us, the most easiest place and probably the best place to socket it to is going to be the right hand. It's where they're always going to be holding that weapon. So on your left hand side in your skeletal tree, just navigate down to your right hand, right click, and then from there just add a socket. Once you've done this, just call it weapon underscore base. right click, and then from there just add a socket. Once you've done this, just call in. And this preview mesh, what we're going to do is we're going to right click it now and add a preview mesh. And this preview mesh is pretty much going to allow us to define how the weapon's going to look, sort of the placement, the scale, and all of that good stuff. So what I'm going to do is set it to the AK mesh and all of that good stuff. So what I'm going to do is set it to the AK mesh here. Now, the only issue with this at the moment is you can see this is absolutely massive. It's way too big. So we need to play around with the scale and all of that good stuff. So what I'm actually going to do is I need to set a preview animation so I can see how this is actually going to be held in the game. So up at the top where you've got your details, to switch to preview scene settings, and then from here for the animation we're just going to set this to the idle just to preview it for now. So go ahead and chuck in your idle animation, idle underscore aiming even, and then with this you can see our gun is all over the place. It's way too big and it's off for the rotation and everything. So what I'm going to do is simply, first things first, I'm going to rotate it so it's facing the right way. Just use these transformation tools to allow us to define how the weapon's going to look, sort of the placement, the scale, and all of that good stuff. So what I'm going to do is set it to the AK mesh here. Now, the only issue with this at the moment is you can see this is absolutely massive. It's way too big. So we need to play around with the scale and all of that good stuff. So what I'm actually going to do is I need to set a preview animation so I can see how this is actually going to be held in the game. So up at the top where you've got your details, to switch to preview scene settings, and then from here for the animation we're just going to set this to the idle just to preview it for now. So go ahead and chuck in your idle animation, just to preview it for now. And from here, for the animation, we're just going to set this to the idle just to preview it for now. So go ahead and chuck in your idle animation, just to preview it for now. And then, so up at the top where you've got your details, to switch to preview scene settings, and then from here for the animation we're just going to set this to the idle. just to preview it for now. And it's off, rotate it onto the side down, scale it and draw effect right now and do how as well. And then for about something you guys can do in your free time, but for me that looks like my this. And then with our character, so for me that's going to be our third person character. Open that up. And then, so for me that's going to be our third pose this. We need to weapon, and that's exactly what I want. So now that I've done this, we need to focus on actually getting this weapon spawned into the game now. So go ahead and close this. And then with our character, so for me that's going to be our third person character. Open that up. And then inside of here, we need to do a little bit of script to actually spawn that into our game. So go into your event graph, ignore the take damage stuff if you've got that open already, and what we've got to look for is our begin play. Now as of right now, we've got some heads up display stuff in there, just completely in there. So doing is spawn actor in that blueprint actor that we created earlier for our weapon. So with the class, obviously,
He's the way over there.
we're going to be setting this down to AK-47, so or weapon underscore base. So weapon underscore base, just go ahead and select this. And then with this, what we're going to be doing is grabbing our spawn transform and just type in make transform. And what this is going to do is just give us some 0 values for location, rotation, and scale. We don't need to change it from here because what we're going to be doing is we're actually going to be attaching all of this stuff to a component as opposed to the normal make transform. So drag out your return value and then just type in attach to component, and then the component that we're after is going to be our mesh. So get a reference to our mesh, and then for our socket, all we're going to do is set this to weapon, and then that should be underscore attach. Make sure you've got the socket name 100% perfect, otherwise it will not work. So if we go ahead and open up our character and our skeleton, just go ahead and double check that. So open up your SWAT character, go into the skeleton just from the little thing up here, and then just check that our socket is called weapon underscore attach. That is all good for me. So I'm going to close this now, and I'm going to close my SWAT character and go back to my third person character, and you can see as of right now there's no weapon in there because we haven't begun playing the game. However, if we go ahead and press play now, you can see we've got our weapon in our hand, we can walk around with our AK-47, and it looks really, really good. Now, bear in mind you have got a little bit of clipping where our camera goes through the weapon a little bit, but that's a really easy fix. And you can see our hand placement is also a little bit off as well, but once again, that's just entirely down to the way that we've got our socket set up. You can play around with that, it's really, really simple. So once again, all you got to do is to just go into our skeleton, open up our SWAT character, head over to skeleton, and then if we set the idle animation as the preview, all you've got to do is just adjust this. If you wanted to, you can even do that in real time. So if I press play real quick, and now with this window open as well, if I wanted to, I could go ahead and select the socket. So let me show you how you can do that. So if I scroll down and then grab my weapon attach, if I now move this around, so move it left or right, it's going to move the weapon in the game as well, which is quite nice. So I'm going to move this down a little bit, just pop it in the hand there, press close, and there we go. And you can see our weapon is being held a little bit better. Now, bear in mind this weapon is not made for this weapon, it's being, just pop it in the hand there, weapon. If I I play real quick, just if we set the idle animation as the preview, skeleton, and go into our skeleton, open up our SWAT character. Again, all you got to do is to just go in and play around with that. It's really, really simple. So once again, all you got to do is to just go into our skeleton, open up our SWAT character, head over to skeleton, and then if we set the idle animation as the preview, all you've got to do is just adjust this. If you wanted to, you can even do that in real time. So if I press play real quick, and now with this window open as well, if I wanted to, I could go ahead and select the socket open, do that in real time. So if I press play real quick, and now with this window open as well, if I wanted to, I could go ahead and select the socket. So let me show you how you can do that. Now move this around, so move it left or right, it's going to move the weapon in the game as well, which is quite nice. So I'm going to move this down a little bit, just pop it in the hand there, press close, and there we go. And you can see our weapon is being held a little bit better. Now bear in mind this weapon is not made for this rig, so the placement is going to be off slightly a little bit, but it's not too much to worry about. But for now, we have got our weapon in the game. Now, just a quick fix for the clipping that you're going to have with your weapon that you saw earlier, your boy Virtus. This weapon isn't... And
О, слушай, слушай. Я ёбаный коп. Храните молчание, все, что вы скажете здесь. Ладно. Ладно, все, начинаем делать.
Люкрин пизда.
Hi everyone, this is Zachary from Non-Locality Software with another Unreal Engine tutorial. Today's tutorial will cover how to do weapon systems for the third-person character using Blueprint. Before we get started today...
Okay, today we're going to be doing a gun and a target system. So basically there'll be a target and basically just shoot it with the gun X amount of times and then it will
YouTube, we're back to do it. Make sure the camera to the mesh and a 90 rotation on the Z-axis. Parent it to the head, and some of those locations might get messed up again, but make sure everything looks like this, and when it's parented to the head, and use pawn control rotation should be checked. So, that's all good. Now, I wanted to show you guys the model first. It looks beautiful. It is completely free. I'm going to put the link in the description. I'm not going to put this link to this web page, but I will give credit to the artist, Chamferzone, I guess. Thanks for making this pretty cool and stuff. So, I already imported it in because I had to get everything working. But it's super easy. Once you download it, it's called wpn.akm. That's the normal file, but I called it wpn.akm fixed. When you import it in and you drag it in, make sure you import it as a skeleton. Don't mess with any of the other settings unless your defaults are weird, but make sure you import all of the good stuff and just press import, not import all. I think that does make a difference. But when you open it up, it's going to be super small. You're not even going to see it. It's going to be one of the camera is going to put you what looks like, geez, I can't even do it. It's going to put you like at the ground like this. You're not going to see anything. Like when you look down and you back up, you're probably not even going to see your model. But just go to skeleton, select wpn.akm, and then select E, which is R, which is the default for scaling, and select that middle thing and keep dragging it out. So just drag it out, up, not down. Up, not down. So once you've got it to a good size, I know you're like, oh man, those textures are ugly and everything, but don't worry about that. We're going to fix that problem. We're going to leave it on here because of the textures, but I'm going to go back into player stuff. Oh, I also created a new folder called weapons to put that in. And it comes with some textures. So I'm going to take those and I'm going to drag them right on in here. Let's open this up. I want to save this, save the skeleton, so that way that's what it'll actually look like and it'll stay that way. So go back over to mesh, and we don't want it to stay that. We want it to be... let's see. We may have to convert these over to materials, but this is the base color, so take that and drag that. Oh, crud. See, there's the issue. So we are going to have to create a material. So make a new material. AKM base. Open it up. And all you need is just to drag in this texture. It'll put it in there just fine, and then put over the base color, I believe. That looks about right. And save that. You can mess around with some of the settings if you want. But I'm personally not gonna. I mean, we could make this texture look really beautiful if I mess around with it, but I am not going to because I'm not good with materials, and that is not my forte, even though I would like to get good at it. Let's go to AKM. There we go, AKM base. Oh. Just got to compile the shaders. So you can see how low poly the model is here. It's not the most glamorous thing, to be honest. It is definitely not a high-end material, but the material may take a while to initialize and set itself in so where it looks proper. So let that set or whatever, because for me it takes a while to quote-unquote render and look proper after everything's said and done. There we go. Now it looks good. So obviously it looked way better on the thing, but that's purely because they had shaders and stuff, and they probably set up the specular and had better settings on this. But it's fine. We still have a good looking AK-47 that we get to goof around with and set up our iron sights too. So go over here and add a. This is going to be a visual component. We'll make the blueprint for the gun in the next episode. But I always add this visual component. Add a skeletal mesh and call it gun. Parent it to the mesh and to the left or right hand. Sorry, hand R. Excuse me. So now we can make it this, and obviously it's not that big because remember it was a very small model and everything, so you're gonna have to scale it up, but that's not that big a deal. They have scaling tools everywhere. So obviously this animation is not made for this gun, and vice versa, this gun is not made for this rig and or animation, but we can make it look pretty, and it won't be too ugly. So just set it up how it looks what looks good to you, obviously, and it looks like he's holding it pretty good. So yeah, that looks pretty good. And that should stay, of course, attached to that, to the hand, I mean, and everything else should be fine. So when we play, we've got a good AK-47. Obviously, we can't shoot, we can't aim, we can't do any of that jazz, and the camera's a little off because, I mean, not many FPS games, I feel like, have a gun at that angle unless they're kind of low quality. So next episode we'll get the we won't mess around with the camera stuff. You guys can do that on your free time. I'll do that on my free time outside of recordings because that's not really necessarily what you need. But if you guys do, if you guys like the way my camera's set up in the next episode, you can comment for the location values and whatever I do to it, and I'll comment them to you, but I won't show you how you do it. So next episode we're gonna fire this awesome AK-47. We're not gonna do muzzle flashes quite yet, but we will get into shooting, and each episode will be something important. Some will be combinations. So I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please like, rate, comment, and subscribe, and stick around for more episodes.
Ебашит.
Ну ладно.
Да, бля, пацаны. Блядь, сука.
So for the next set,
Смех мамы вспомнил. А вот он тоже все снимаешь, типа вот как переписываешься. Похуй. Ты снимаешь?
Я еще не понимаю.
Да.
У меня же тем более скрины. У меня просто скрины делать. И всё.
А откуда потом он будет знать, что он часто снимал ее дела в YouTube?
Ну, время все.
Что время?
А?
А вот эта хуйня, что ли? Типа
У
скрин.
меня сверху вот времени на компьютере.
А если ты, например, сейчас снимешь, да, потом через 5 часов сможешь снять. 5 часов что сделал? Понял? Если сейчас вот так сделаешь один скриншот, и вот потом через 4 часа сделаешь еще один, например, как будто получается.
Ну, он сказал, что 30 секунд там каждый.
Практика. Как будет practice?
In this tutorial, I'm going to show how to make the player fire a simple projectile. First thing we need to do is create an empty. Now if I open that in the blueprint editor, you can see it's empty at the moment. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a sphere component to use as the collision as this moves through the world. We're going to make it a little bit smaller. And then I'm going to add a mesh component, a static mesh component, using a mesh, which I'm going to place in the middle using the widget. I'll do. And we don't want any collision on that mesh, that's just for visual. So I'll come down here to collision presets and set that to no collision. Now, that gives us the visuals. We want the movement as well. Unreal actually comes with a set of useful pre-made behaviors inside components, so we can use a projectile movement component in here. And for this, I want the velocity to start moving forwards in local space along x. So I set velocity to 100, and then I'm going to set the initial speed to be 2,000 units a second. So that's our projectile made. We can actually test this out by just dragging the projectile into the world, and if I hit simulate, you can see that my projectile fires nicely. So now we need to update the player to fire this projectile. So what I'll do is I'll find the player blueprint. Right now this already has a bunch of logic in here, just simple logic for moving around, so moving forwards, left, right, looking up, down and turning. So I'm going to add some extra logic in here. First of all, I need to capture the mouse button, so I'm going to do input, mouse events, left mouse button. I want to spawn something when the left mouse button is pressed. Now I'm going to add the spawn actor node, spawn actor from blueprint, and I'm going to choose the projectile blueprint that I just made. Now, it goes together. Now, where do we want to spawn the projectile from? Well, we want to spawn it from the location of the player, and the rotation we want to use is what we call the controller rotation. This means that as we look up and down, we'll change the rotation of the projectile. Now we need to make those into a transform. Like this, and plug that in there. Now, that would work fine. The only problem we'd have right now is that this would actually spawn it inside the player, rather than in front of him. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this up a little bit. Take the rotation, get the forward vector from that rotation, add, say, multiply that by, say, 100, and then add that to the start position. And now I can plug that as the spawn location into that transform. So there we go. Let's see if that works. So there we go. Now I can shoot my projectile into the world. One other thing I'll show you quickly, which is very powerful inside the blueprint editor, is the debugger. If I bring up the blueprint that I just made, I can actually place a breakpoint onto any event by right-clicking and choosing Add Breakpoint. And then when I play the game, when I press the button, it immediately jumps to the point that the breakpoint's on, and I can look at various values inside the debugger, and by pressing the step button, I can move from one action to the next and look at all the different values that are going on. This is an extremely powerful tool for fixing your blueprints and working out what's going on.
Hey everyone, Weaver here, back again with more Unreal Engine 4 tutorials. And today we're going to do part 3, which is going to be projectiles. And we're going to take a quick look at the materials editor. And before all that, I want to just clarify the rotation, or the character movement sort of setup I've settled on. It's quite simple. All I've done is everything's at default. If you press the little I don't know, yellow return arrow thing on the side of something and go back to default. Everything is default except for max walk speed, which is at 1500. I've settled on the falling, swimming, I mean water movement doesn't really matter. But that's basically all I've changed in it. Now, something strange has happened. And that is because I upgraded to Unreal Engine 4.1.1, the character just, I don't know, they move like they have no velocity to them. It's quite odd. And how I fix that is if you just delete the character and drag a new character on, and then press play, they move properly again. It's super strange, and if you're running into that, I very much suggest you just put a new character on, and your problems will go away. Now again, you know, if you're following along, that's why I presented you with this. If you're following along with these tutorials and you kind of want the same setup I have, this is what I've used. It's everything default except for max walk speed. That's it. You are welcome in your game to make this how you want. So there you go. That said, if you know you make it flying and that ends up making some weird problem down the road because my tutorials don't line up with what you've done, I don't know. It's your fault, I guess. But anyways, let's make some bullets. Let's get into this and start shooting stuff. So if we go to blueprints, what we're going to do is we're going to make a new blueprint. It's going to be an actor. Just going to call this bullet because I'm not creative. And what is our bullet going to need? It's going to need a few things. One, it's going to need a box. You could use a capsule component if you wanted. I'm going to use a box for collision. I'm going to call this collision box. Even though I'm calling this collision box, we are not really going to worry about collision this episode. It's going to be next episode. Collision is a very in-depth topic, so I want to make sure I've got my notes together on collision before we get into that. We're also going to need a shape for the bullet. So if you go to shapes, assuming you have the starter content, and I hope you do, I'm going to use, I don't know. I like this. I like the narrow capsule. So let's drag that in there. We'll call it bullet mesh. Let's sort of drag this into the center here. Whoop. Sometimes those things are really hard to grab. Obviously, it's not really in the box properly. Holy, that's fast. Alright, and we're also going to need, and this is key, a projectile movement component. That's very important. I'll just take the one off that color. Projectile movement. Okay. Now, before we go, let's just roughly line up our box. I mean, it's a bit, you know, bit bad. If you click on the collision box and go down to shape, you can sort of scale the box a bit. Whatever, it can be rough. It's fine. That's okay, isn't it? Maybe move this guy up a wee bit. If you hold 1 in this editor and then left click, a single value shows up. If you hold 2 and left click, a double value shows up. If you hold 3, a triple value shows up. If you hold 4, a quadruple value shows up. I don't think there's a 5 value. Yeah, so it's just 1 to 4, which makes sense. Because colors, in general, are RGBA, red, green, blue, and alpha, or its transparency. So it kind of knows that we're really working with colors and stuff like that in here. You know, it's set up for that workflow, which is great. Now, I'm going to kind of show you what all these do, more or less. You can get really complicated with these. You can have like a sine wave function in here. Sine wave, and it like floats, and you can have a glow that like rises and falls and stuff. We're not going to do that. Okay, we're not going to even have a texture. We're just going to have a basic colored thing. All right. So if you press 3 and left click, you'll get a 3 value thing, a 3 value vector. You know, I like the color green, so I'm going to put a 1 in green, and we have a color green. And if we hook that up to the base color, it's green now. Perfect. Now, what are all these other things? Metallic, specular, and roughness are all single value components to this. Emissive color is not a single value component. It's a 3 value color, maybe even 4, but whatever. Normal is probably a triple value thing. I mean, most people wouldn't just use 3 values as a normal. They would use a texture map. World offset position, I don't even know what that does. And ambient occlusion, I kind of know what it does, but I don't really know what it does anyway. So, as you can see, I'm not the best teacher for the materials editor, which is another reason why we're not going too in-depth into it. But I can show you sort of, basic stuff. If you want something really shiny, if you make a new singular value thing and put the roughness at 0, it's super shiny. If you want something to look a bit metallic, so put a single value to the metallic thing. Now it doesn't really look like metal, but if we start upping that, it kind of looks more metallic, doesn't it? It looks like a shiny hood of a car or something like that. Specular is, if you've ever programmed sort of maybe there we go, if you hold it down. Now something annoying about this is there is a 200 millisecond delay from when you click the mouse. Hopefully you can hear that. Till when he starts firing. It's not the worst. Maybe I'll make this 0.1 or something. It's less noticeable. For now, let's roll with this setup. It is not perfect. An alternative to using the gate... Oh, sorry, the gate will say... It's going to check the gate every tick and say, is pressed, then the gate is open, and we should be doing this, right? We should do its exit thing. And if the gate's closed, well, don't do anything. Perfect, okay. Alright, so that's our firing thing. It works. We'll keep cast failed there. And I'm going to comment this. Fire bullets. Okay, so here we are in the rotation controller again. Sorry, I had to take a step back. I know these edits are a bit abrupt, but it is what it is. So, I mean, it works, right? What's here works, and you could totally use it, that's fine. The only thing that bothers me is this constant casting of the rotation character. It's totally okay, but for some reason, I kind of want to store a reference to the rotation character within this controller. So how we're going to do that is quite simple. If you right click here, say new variable, call this one player character or something, you know, identifiable, and it's variable type. Click variable type. What we want it to be is a rotation character. They have C's for some reason, I don't know. Make sure it is the object rotation character and not the rotation character class. Okay, perfect. Sorry that this... Oh, I didn't save the player character. I'm really sorry this tutorial's gone so long. Wasn't really my intent, but hey. Okay, if we set... Sorry. We want to, when we begin play, store a reference to this player character. So, okay, begin play. What we need to do is... So there's a cool trick. If you hold control... Maybe this says... Yeah. You can drag variables around. Something. Pin a node together. Well, whatever. Okay. If you hold control, it's automatically like if you just drag it off and say get. Oh yeah. Control drag to automatically create a getter. Alt drag to automatically create a setter. Nice shortcut. So anyways. So we don't actually want to get it. I don't know why I'm doing this. We want a set. We want to set this player character to get controlled pawn to the controlled pawn, cast, like we did below, as a rotation character. We'll drag that up here, let's put that there, do the set, and make sure you link up the node it's casting as. When the cast fails, print player character cast failure or something like that, so we know something went wrong. I'm going to comment this box as store reference to player or something like that. And then under the fire bullets, we don't need this anymore. We don't need this print string. We don't need this. All we need is a player character. We need to get it. We need to move that over here. Put this here. And then store that there. Hopefully that wasn't too quick. We can save and compile and play. And the engine didn't crash. And there we go. It works just like before. But my obsessive compulsive blueprint cleanliness is satiated. So there you go. You don't have to do it this way. I kind of like it. And then, you know, if we need a reference to it in the future, we won't have to cast it each time. Which, again, isn't a heavy operation at all. It's just in blueprints kind of takes up a lot of space. So, okay, that's it. Sorry, I'm out of breath. This took forever for me to record this. But, yeah, I'm really hoping you're enjoying these tutorials. I like making them. It's very satisfying when people say, oh, this really helped me. So on that note, if this did help you, please feel free to leave a comment in the section below. If this didn't help you, again, I'm sorry to have wasted your time. And if you have any comments on you did this wrong, or this could be optimized, or I would have done it this way, or whatever, absolutely, please feel free to leave a comment in the section below, and we can all talk about it and